welcome back to the new show. My name's Random Rob, and today I'm going back to 1996 again to talk about a film called Screamers. Screamers was an adaptation of the famous Philip K. Dick story, Second Variety, which is one of the first science fiction stories I remember reading that dealt with the idea of robots evolving on their own, long before Rudy Rucker tackled it in the 80s. And Screamers, like Total Recall, was a writing project that Dan O'Bannon did. O'Bannon, as you remember, had also done one of the first screenplays for Total Recall, which eventually got produced with the help of Arnold Schwarzenegger. But I think O'Bannon's screenplay had been kicking around for about 10 years when a screenwriter named Miguel Flores decided to give it a rewrite. And apparently when the movie Screamers came out, Dan O'Bannon didn't even know that his screenplay had been adapted. And it's nice that they remembered to give him a writing credit on it. Now, to be frank, is Screamers a good movie? No. But is it a good Philip K. Dick film adaptation? Yes, it is. And this is one thing that I don't think movie critics really cared much about when Screamers came out and it was getting its early reviews. Many reviewers commented that they thought the opening of the film was terrible. But if you've read the story Second Variety, the opening of the film pretty much covers all the details of the beginning of the story. Second Variety basically goes like this. It's about 100 years in the future. The US and Soviets have been at war for decades. Most of the humans who are still alive are now living on lunar colonies, as the Earth has been pretty much destroyed by nuclear war and what followed, which was the creation of the Claws. The Claws are self-aware, self-replicating, self-evolving robots that burrow through the ground and spring out and tear apart any human beings they come across. The commander of the US forces receives a message that comes from a lone Soviet soldier who approaches the US base and gets torn apart by the Claws. They retrieve his message, and the message being that the Soviets want to make a peace treaty and that the commander of the US forces should come to the Soviet forward command and meet and discuss terms of the end of hostilities. And the story proceeds through a number of reversals and the realization that the Claws are adapting into more evolved forms, with the final horror being the realization that the Claws have figured out how to imitate human beings. It's a very dark story, it's a very down story, and the movie does a really good job of capturing the feeling of what all Dick's stories were like, which is characters having to deal with insane contradictions in their environment, the idea that the future is dilapidated and broken down. And this is one area where I'm often critical of Philip K. Dick adaptations, is they usually try to, and this is probably because of Blade Runner, filmmakers often try to make his future seem stylish. Stylish would be the last adjective you would use for Philip K. Dick's futures. They were always low rent and really seedy. So some details about the film. It was directed by Christian Duguay, who's a Canadian cinematographer turned filmmaker. He's done a lot of work in TV. I believe he really cut his teeth working on the sequels to David Cronenberg's Scanners. Later on, he directed the film Art of War with Wesley Snipes, which was a minor hit. Most of the film was shot in and around a quarry outside of Joliet, Quebec. It was bitterly cold when they were shooting. I believe Duguay said in an interview in some of the scenes they were doing, it was like minus 30 or minus 40. According to IMDb, most of the characters and situations from O'Bannon's screenplay were kept intact. The main thing that was rewritten was the dialogue, and apparently Peter Weller was a big contributor on this. In an interview on the Blu-ray, director Christian Duguay says that Peter Weller was very helpful in the process, said he enjoyed working with him. Peter Weller, I don't think, has ever spoken about working on this film except for one clip, I believe from Entertainment Tonight, where a reporter had gone to the set and asked Weller about the character he was playing in the film, and Weller responded He said something to the effect of, the character is one who gets paid to show up and say his lines, and that's it. And there were no further interviews from him regarding the film. You know, I don't know what Weller's deal was on the film. Maybe he just hated the production. He didn't seem to. Maybe he just figured it was a B movie and the less said the better. In fact, there's several scenes in this movie I would wager that Weller was a little drunk. Interestingly, though, it helps the character. Being bitter and pissed off fits the material perfectly. Screamers ended up costing about $20 million. I believe it was made as an independent movie. It made about $6 million. Not that good. There was, oddly, a direct-to-video sequel in 2009, Screamers Resurrection, Screamers The Awakening, and was budgeted at about $6 million, which was all the first film made. Haven't seen it. Probably not a film I'd track down. But I'll say about Screamers, I like this film. I like the vibe of it, the tone, the look. Some of the dialogue is really good. You know, all of the leads do very well with the material they have. The only real down point of the film is the climax. The final scene is really quite silly. They went for emotion at the end, which really wasn't a strong point of the story. It's too little too late. Just in general, most films that end with killer teddy bears, that's the real caveat on this one. You know, killer teddy bear at the end. But having said that, it's worth looking at for its design, its mood. There were some matte backgrounds done for several sequences when they're out on the surface of the planet. I don't know if these were computer composited or were done with glass in the traditional way. They look like glass paintings, and they're really excellent, really high quality. It's one thing I miss from old movies, where it's just a really good glass painting, you know, like Albert Whitlock used to do. I love a good glass painting. Also a solid soundtrack by Arthur Kemple. The opening theme has the same kind of martial rhythm and melody as Total Recall. He references it at a couple of points. And his horror cues in this movie are really good. So yeah, Screamer is kind of a flawed mess of a movie, but a solid Philip K. Dick adaptation, and all that implies. This is just making me think for a future episode, maybe coming up with a top 10 list of best Philip K. Dick film adaptations. Definitely something to think about. Okay guys, thanks for stopping in. I hope you all are having a great week. I'm Random Rob from the new show. Thanks for watching. If you like what you heard, press the like button and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron of the new show. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.